Take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
CannabisRadio.com presents The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hey, this is great, man.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
All right, good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Tuesday, July 19th, 2016, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us, coming to you live from beautiful legal Potland, Oregon, at the top of the Ardea Tower on the south waterfront, overlooking the Willamette River and looking straight out at Mount Hood. Great time to have you here on the show. We are fully surfing the wave of legalization as it moves from the west and the northeast all across this great country of ours, and we'll be here bringing you all the latest news, the latest poll results, and of course, the latest election results. That's coming up on our Marijuana Election Night 2016 coverage. It'll be my fifth election, bringing you coverage of the marijuana ballots that are happening all across the country. And this year, we may have as many as 9 or 10 states to report on. And we'll have live reporters from each of those states bringing you the latest news. So keep up with us here on CannabisRadio.com and look forward this November to Marijuana Election Night 2016. You'll hear it first right here on Cannabis Radio. On today's show, we've got a special extended radical rant for you today. I'm going to take 2 segments to take a look at the latest arguments against legalizing marijuana. You know, we've got marijuana legalization hitting the ballot in California, Arizona, Nevada, Massachusetts, and Maine. And in all of those states, the opponents of marijuana legalization are submitting their ballot arguments against, the con arguments that you get in the election folder. And today I'm taking a look at the state of Arizona, where they've recently had 12 or 13 different opposition arguments that have been turned in. I'm tearing these apart for a future article in High Times, and I thought I would share with you some of the latest thinking from the opponents of marijuana legalization. There's some half-truths, there's some obfuscations, and there's some outright lies. We'll cover all that for you coming up in a double radical rant on today's show. Also coming up on the show, we'll have time for some drug war data mining. And in the data mines today, we find some information on the energy consumption of the legitimate marijuana industry and why we still haven't gone far enough and we need to do more legalization in more places if we really want to make marijuana an environmentally conscious industry. So we'll talk about that in drug war data mining. That comes right after our Cannabis Focus segment. We'll look behind the headlines on California's Emerald Triangle and how the first 2 large-scale growing licenses have just been issued there. There is a reaction, of course, from the Humboldt growing community, and we'll talk all about the controversy that's going on there. But before that, we start with the Cannabis Radio News. And in the headlines today, we've got to look at that initiative in Arizona and how the opponents are trying a last-ditch Hail Mary pass to try to stop it. We take a look at Juneau, Alaska, where they're continuing to work on the regulations for marijuana cafes, pot lounges, whatever you want to call them. We got some updates on that for you. We take a look at North Dakota, where the opponents of medical marijuana there are trying to scare the voters about a medical marijuana initiative that's been proposed. And we take a look at the Central California city of Coalinga, which has sold its prison to turn it into a marijuana grow. That's one of the best kind of stories we could tell you. Also, stay tuned for Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. Lots of interesting stories for us to cover in TTR today, including a near-fatal K2 overdose in Washington State. Arkansas has raised some money for its marijuana push, and we'll also look at the Arizona fundraising. We've got a delay on the DEA and marijuana rescheduling and an estimate for how much marijuana legalization could reap the nation of New Zealand. That's all coming up in the next 2 hours here live on CannabisRadio.com. I'm Radical Russ from Portland. We're back right after this.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Being green is good. Growing green is good. Making green is great. CannabisRadio.com.
The next generation of vaporizers has arrived. Vuber vaporizers are blazing the way with unparalleled technology for oil, concentrate, or dry flower pens. Providing unsurpassed customer service and expert craftsmanship, Vuber vaporizers use cutting-edge technology, providing a power-packed, smoother vapor with a lifetime guarantee. Experience vaporizing the way it was meant to be, the Vuber way.
Tommy Chong is ready to cut through the smoke and change the tone of Tilk Radio.
During Dance with the Stars, I started feeling discomfort. Yeah. And not only that, I was doing these old man smells. And it was kind of embarrassing because, all the Dancing with the Stars crew, cast and crew, they were all young kids. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, this old guy would come along and do one of those silent farts, that you don't know you're doing it. Yeah. And all of a sudden you smell, and everybody go, what the hell smells? And, it was me. And so I'd scurry off to the bathroom, and that's when I knew that there was something wrong.
The Tommy Chong Podcast, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome to my world.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio.
It's time for the Cannabis Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Cannabis Radio News is now available exclusively at CannabisRadio.com. Now your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is Cannabis Radio News.
This is your Cannabis Radio News for Tuesday, July 19th, 2016. Phoenix, Arizona. A Maricopa County judge has given lawyers defending an initiative that would legalize recreational marijuana in Arizona several weeks to prepare their case. Judge Jo Lynn Gentry on Tuesday said she'll hear arguments on the case filed by 13 individuals and groups, including Maricopa County Attorney Bill Montgomery and Yavapai County Attorney Sheila Polk, on August 12th. They're trying to get the court to block the initiative from the November ballot. That gives backers of the initiative time to rebut arguments that the 100-word explanation on petition sheets doesn't fully explain the effects of the proposed legalization, and that it doesn't contain a legal funding mechanism. Polk says the challenge is about the integrity of the initiative process and that backers of the initiative didn't follow the rules. The attorney for the backers of the initiative says the opponents have a weak case at best. Corey Langhofer says they're just trying a Hail Mary pass to keep the initiative off the November ballot. State election officials still are verifying whether the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol submitted the 150,000 valid signatures needed to qualify for the ballot. Juneau, Alaska. Alaska marijuana regulators aren't ready to buy into Amsterdam-style cannabis cafes just yet and are going back to the public for more feedback. The Marijuana Control Board considered a draft regulation that would have allowed cannabis shops to sell product for on-site use only, like a bar would sell alcohol. However, after a member raised concerns, the board is now looking at a narrower plan that would allow people to buy marijuana products in an authorized store and go into a separate area to partake. They would be allowed to take resealed, unused portions home with them. Board member Mark Springer said the initial discussion over on-site use had gone from providing a place for tourists off of cruise ships to buy and use legal marijuana toward allowing for marijuana bars. Erica McConnell, Anchorage's marijuana coordinator, said the concept of a marijuana bar would encourage consumption outside of the home, increasing the likelihood of public intoxication and impaired driving. Bismarck, North Dakota. It would cost North Dakota's health department more than $3.5 million a year and a small army of workers to regulate medical marijuana if the issue appears on the November ballot and voters approve it, according to an analysis by the agency. Supporters of the so-called North Dakota Compassion Care Act turned in 17,600 signatures Monday. Backers must have 13,500 qualified signatures to put it to a statewide vote in the November 8 general election. Secretary of State Al Jaeger has about 1 month to decide whether the petitions are sufficient. With voters' approval, the initiative would make it legal for North Dakota residents who suffer from one of several debilitating illnesses to use marijuana with a doctor's permission and possess up to 3 ounces of marijuana for medical purposes from either a state-licensed dispensary or a personally grown supply. Riley Ray Morgan, a Fargo financial planner who is heading the effort to legalize marijuana for medicinal purposes, called the estimates, quote, overblown, end quote, and an attempt to derail the effort in a budget-challenged state, a charge the agency denies. Coalinga, California. The Central California city of Coalinga has sold its empty prison to a marijuana company that will grow and process cannabis there. The abandoned Claremont Custody Center was sold to Ocean Grown Extracts for $4.1 million by the city, which had been struggling under almost $3.3 to $3.8 million in debt. The sale puts the city's budget back into the black and was approved by the city council in a 4-1 vote. Residents who once resisted marijuana operations in their area have come around thanks to some education about the nature of marijuana businesses, the adoption by California legislators of a statewide regulatory system, and the promise of up to 100 new jobs for the area. Referring to the prison-turned-pot farm, Coalinga Mayor Pro Tem Patrick Keogh told the Fresno Bee, quote, "It's like what the Grateful Dead said, what a long, strange trip it's been," end quote. This has been your Cannabis Radio News for Tuesday, July 19th, 2016. I'm Russ Belville.
Cannabis use isn't the only thing growing, so are we. Grow with us. CannabisRadio.com.
Play as Ted Growing, expelled botany sophomore and the biggest grower in town, only on Weed Firm Replanted. Available on the App Store and Google Play.
It's a lot of work being the biggest grower in town. Maintaining a room full of plants while dealing with a slew of eccentric customers? From a hardcore partier to the curious neighbor next door.
Is anybody home?
Help me expand my bud business by unlocking new strains, customizing my grow room, and completing challenges that you can't get enough of. Grow your empire so big you can see it from space. Low on funds? Don't worry. Weed Firm Replanted is free to download.
Download Weed Firm Replanted for free on the App Store and Google Play today. Get growing, Mr. Growing.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks are far less than those posed by legal drugs.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
I opted for convenience to use my personal email account.
Okay, maybe you're high, too.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest-growing business association in the fastest-growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com, and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
The world of cannabis is evolving at a frenetic pace. The Russ Belville Show gets behind the headlines to take a deeper look at breaking news in our Cannabis Focus.
Today in the Cannabis Focus, we're taking a look at a story in the Eureka Times Standard about the issuance of the first 2 cannabis farming licenses in Humboldt County, California, the center of the famed Emerald Triangle, where a great majority of American cannabis is grown. So this marks a new point in Humboldt County in the Emerald Triangle area. The 2 farms are a 1/4-acre mixed light farm in Carlotta and a 7-acre outdoor farm and processing center in Honeydew. There are about 100 more prospective medical marijuana business owners submitting applications in the county. The senior planner there, Steve Lazar, expects hundreds more in the coming months. He says this is just the first end of a big wave that's about to crest. Now, these larger grow sites were approved in January and take effect in late February. And the medical marijuana regulations took effect in January and approved in January, took effect in late February. And Humboldt County has been beginning this process of how they're going to license these medical marijuana farms. This comes under the MMRSA, or the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act. And under that act, someone who wants to grow has to have both a state and a local license. So these two growers, one of them's named Alex Moore. He and his wife Miranda own this Honeydew Farms LLC that's going to have the 7-acre grow. They've just been cultivating an acre so far, and now he's going to expand by another 6 acres. This has caused a little bit of controversy, though, in Humboldt County, as some people there believe this is the beginning of the end of the small craft cultivator in Humboldt County. It was a 4-1 vote among the commissioners, but there's some people just are not too happy about this. One group was the Humboldt Mendocino Marijuana Advocacy Project, HUMAP, and their spokesperson, Robert Sutherland, said, quote, "The county is catering to the greedheads. Instead, we need to focus on an industry that continues to honor its reputation for quality. People will buy based on their knowledge that it's coming from a hands-on, very conscientious, and responsible handler," end quote. And I just wanted to make a comment about this. I understand how we in the cannabis movement want to ensure that the small-scale grower and craft cannabis and finely grown cannabis maintains its family feel, its non-corporate feel. I understand that want. But as a cannabis consumer, I'm against any sort of protectionism or regulation that is going to drastically increase the price of marijuana. The idea that we're going to take the most fertile growing area in the United States and have it continue to only be cultivated by small-scale growers just doesn't wash for me. That sounds to me like creating far more overhead than is necessary and failing to take advantage of some economies of scale that will allow for the lower cost production of cannabis. The other thing I'd like to comment about this is, while sure, there are plenty of good old boy family growers, longtime third generation hippie types up in the Emerald Triangle that are doing good work and providing great cannabis, there are others that they're just cutting corners. That there are others that are polluting streams, diverting water, that are giving us a bad image amongst the people we're trying to convince legalization needs to happen. In so much as licensing and regulation is going to put an end to that, is going to make the growers more environmentally conscious, to obey water rights and so forth, the more that comes along, the better. But I don't think that needs to be restricted to just small-scale growers in order for that to happen. What I'd like to see happen is a decent mix of a few large-scale grows, maybe 12, 2 dozen of those, and then hundreds and hundreds of smaller-scale grows. I think the model we could look at would be somewhat like the alcohol model, not to that extent. I don't think we need to have a Budweiser level or Coors level or Miller level producer. And in fact, I don't think we can until marijuana is legalized from coast to coast. It can't happen on a state-by-state basis. I would like to see the largest growers be state-level growers and to see the majority of growers be the small level, kind of like what we see in the beer industry now, where we have so many local microbrews and craft brewers that are starting to pop up, even in the face of these massive Miller, Budweiser type organizations with their huge advertising dollars. I think we can have an even better ratio of small growers to large growers, or small producers to large producers compared to the beer industry. So I'm really not afraid of this idea of larger scale growers coming into Humboldt County. But we shall see how this pans out, and we'll keep you focused on it.
Sorry ass motherfucker got nothing on me, right?
I tell you, these last few weeks, President Obama's just letting it all hang out, ain't he? Well, I hope you enjoyed that Republican convention last night. I watched some of that. I got to tell you, I think I sat through the longest Miss Universe question and answer period ever last night. Slightly better than Miss South Carolina Melania. Slightly better. Be back in just a couple minutes.
We don't limit how much you smoke, and we don't limit where you listen. Cannabis Radio is now on iTunes, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio.
Hi, I'm Montel Williams. Most of you know me as a talk show host, but I'm also an author, actor, single father of 4, avid snowboarder, and I'm also a medical marijuana patient. Living with multiple sclerosis, I'm in pain every day. Medical marijuana is my last resort, and it helps me when all other drugs have failed. If you'd like more information about medical marijuana, you can contact the Marijuana Policy Project at mpp.org or call 1-877-JOIN-MPP.
Growing green to generate more green.
Hello to all you happy herbalizers, smiling trippy hippies, and everyone who believes in freedom and tolerance. This is The Grow Show, and I'm Kyle Cushman.
From food to fuel, from remedy to resource.
Welcome my guest, Ed Rosenthal, the guru of ganja. Let me ask you, right now I hear your lighter clicking. Are you smoking indoor or are you smoking sun-grown?
What am I smoking? I'm smoking concentrate.
Way to get out of the answer there. So you're truly like the king, right? You just clap your hands and somebody brings you a bowl and you're all set, right?
I wish that were the case.
The Grow Show with Kyle Cushman, only on CannabisRadio.com.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
You're going to find really wonderful, well-meaning, well-spoken people, and then people that are just batshit crazy.
Okay, maybe you're high, too.
Coming soon to a city near you, Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. Get all your cannabis accounting, legal, and compliance questions answered by their knowledgeable panel of industry experts who want to help your canna business boom. Whether you're a grower, dispensary operator, or a newcomer to the field, your canna business needs Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. For information on upcoming events, visit CannabisFinanceBootCamp.com.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Today in the Drug War Data Mines, we take a look at the figures for energy consumption from the marijuana industry, and we have to face a kind of uncomfortable, or shall I say, an inconvenient truth. And the fact is, legalizing marijuana may actually be worse for the environment than marijuana prohibition. In some ways, and part of the reason for this is how we've gone about legalizing marijuana. In a completely prohibition world, of course, we have a lot of people that are growing marijuana indoors, but we also have a lot of marijuana that's grown outdoors in illegal grows, in national forests and such. And those, of course, are grown under the sun and not using our electrical grid. As marijuana becomes more legalized, fewer consumers want that outdoor Mexican-type brickweed and more want the indoor hydroponically grown legal weed, to the point where we could actually be driving more of our cultivation indoors through marijuana legalization than prohibition did. Now, part of the problem in this respect has to do with, again, the laws and how they've been implemented. Like in Colorado, that is requiring all of its marijuana to be grown indoors, despite the fact that you could grow quite a bit of marijuana outdoors, especially in those eastern plains of Colorado, east of the Rocky Mountains, on the way towards Kansas. And we also see this somewhat in the other states so far that have passed marijuana legalization and come up with limitations on how large outdoor grows can be, or regulations that make it difficult to do greenhouse grows. It's incumbent on the regulators and the voters to start to understand that this need or this want to have marijuana grown indoors for the security purposes of it, and for the morality purposes of not seeing big fields of legal cannabis being grown, is coming at the cost of our environment, coming at the cost of waste within our electrical grid. Here's some facts for you. This comes from the Northwest Power and Conservation Council. They do the energy planning for the Columbia River Basin. That's Oregon and Washington, Montana and Idaho, basically your northwest corner of America. And they say indoor marijuana cultivation generates $6 billion in energy costs annually. $6 billion. Growing marijuana indoors consumes 5,000 kilowatt hours of electricity per kilogram of output. That's 5 megawatts. It costs 5 megawatts of electricity to make a kilogram of pot. For comparison's sake, you want to make a kilogram of aluminum? It takes 16 kilowatt hours. 5,000 for a kilo of pot, 16 for a kilo of aluminum. Or for my British listeners, aluminium. In Colorado, the legal marijuana business has made $1 billion in sale. That's up 42% from the previous year. And of course, indoor cultivation requires the electricity for the lights, the air exchanges, the ventilation, keeping consistent temperature and humidity levels. And so now the state, you can't even get warehouse space in Denver anymore. It's all taken up by indoor grows. The experts there estimate that a 5,000 square foot indoor marijuana facility in Colorado consumes 6 times more electricity per square foot than the average commercial business, and 49 times more electricity per square foot than the average residence. Electricity use in Denver is rising by 1.2% a year, and marijuana farms account for almost half of that increase. Now, this flies in the face of Colorado that has made a commitment to get 30% of its electricity from renewable sources. Currently, that's only at 18%, and it's going to be harder to get to that level as commercial marijuana grows, forced to remain inside, continue to use up all that electricity. So we need to make sure that the regulators, like I said, understand that this is untenable. We cannot continue generating all of our commercial cannabis through indoor grows. We need to start licensing in Colorado these greenhouse operations and to start considering outdoor grows. And I understand the fear of the outdoor grow, having to have all the security requirements, but really I think it comes down to these people not wanting there to be the visual of legal marijuana fields. I don't think they want that sort of condoning or symbolism to be associated with Colorado. But if they do not move in this direction, they will continue to put such a strain on the electrical grid that it will begin to become an issue, especially as electricity costs will begin to rise. The other states looking to legalize, especially California, would be keen to get the licensing for their outdoor farms taken care of. California has already started with a 5-year moratorium on large-scale outdoor grows. This is a kind of a protectionist move for the small-scale growers in California that want to make sure that they can still be competitive. But every year that they delay, allowing large-scale outdoor grows larger than an acre to begin, the more those energy costs are going to add up. Let's get marijuana legalized across the nation. Let's normalize these large-scale outdoor grows. Now, that's not to say we won't have any indoor grows. There will still be indoor hydroponic, cryonic, super growers in there that are going to make the super boutique bud. But that shouldn't be the majority of what's being sold, especially to the newbies. They can't appreciate it.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Maui Wowie, Acapulco Gold, California Kush. Our strains stretch everywhere too. This is the Cannabis Radio Network.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks may be far less than those posed by legal drugs. Get the latest updates on the Russ Belville Show by following Radical Russ on Twitter and liking the Russ Belville Show on Facebook.
Are you playing an acoustic guitar but want to be louder without an amp? Try a resonator guitar. The fingerboard extension has National Resophonic and other resonators, square necks and round necks. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com. Go wild hog in the woods.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant. Well, today in the Radical Rant, we're going to take a good long look at the arguments against marijuana legalization initiatives in this country. As you know, we've got initiatives likely to be on the ballot in all 5 of the states we've been going for: California, Nevada, Massachusetts, Maine, and Arizona. California, Nevada, and Maine are already on the ballot. They're still counting the signatures in Arizona and Massachusetts, but they turned in well over the number they needed and will likely be on the ballot. In every one of these states, what you're going to find is a ballot that contains both pro and con arguments for the initiatives that are on the ballot. It's a standard thing you see, and of course, there will be arguments against marijuana legalization from the usual suspects, the sheriffs, the rehabbers, and so forth. And today, I took a look at what had been published at the Arizona Secretary of State site. Both the pro and con arguments. Ray Stern out there at the Phoenix New Times had kind of a link to it, and I got to reading these and decided it's going to be my article for Friday in hightimes.com, I should say. So I've been going through these points, and there's a lot of redundancy here, but all of the greatest hits are in these, and I'll just go through some of them here, no particular order, just to give you an idea of what you're going to hear. And it's not just, while these are coming from Arizona, you're going to hear the same damn talking points in the other states. So this is just kind of a rundown of it to give you the ammunition you need to fight back. So let's start with the statement from Seth Leibsohn. Seth Leibsohn. He's the chairman of Not My Kid and the chairman of Arizonans for Responsible Drug Policy. And part of his complaint is that there is no doubt, this is his quote, by the way, everything I'm saying here is quotes from these people. There is no doubt that youth use will increase with legalization. In Colorado, youth use of marijuana is now 74% higher than the national average. And that's a pretty accurate stat. Like, I don't mean accurate like true. I mean to the point that they're getting it down to 74. They're not saying 3/4. They're not saying more than 70%. They're saying, 74%. And this came up in at least 6 or 7 or 8 of the other arguments against legalization. 74% higher than the national average. I thought that sounded odd because I was pretty sure I've seen over the last 3, 4, 5 different federal surveys and state surveys that the marijuana use hadn't gone up among the teenagers. In fact, here's a story from Reuters. Teen marijuana use in Colorado found lower than national average. Well, that's odd. Mr. Liebson just said it was higher than national average. It was at 74% higher than the national average. What could this be? Well, according to Reuters, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment showed the percentage of high school students indulging in marijuana in Colorado was smaller than the national average among teens. According to the department, 21.2% of Colorado high school students surveyed in 2015 had used marijuana during the preceding 30 days, down from 22% in 2011, the year before voters statewide approved recreational cannabis use by adults 21 and older. Nationwide, the rate of pot use by teens is slightly higher at 21.7%. So, Colorado had a slight decrease in teen use on a monthly basis and is slightly lower than the national average on teen monthly use. This is according to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. This isn't High Times reporting it to you. This isn't Normal reporting it to you. The other thing they say is Colorado ranks first in the nation for marijuana use by youth between the ages of 12 and 17. Not quite true, but Colorado, I will admit, is in the top 4 or 5 states, no matter what year you take a look at it, in teen marijuana use. Both before legalization and after legalization. So to say Colorado has the highest teen marijuana use in the nation could be half true, depending on which year you're talking about. If you say it's in the top 5, it's definitely true. But it doesn't matter what year you're talking about. Neither before or after legalization, we see a difference in the use of marijuana by youth in Colorado. It's always been a state with a lot of youth marijuana use. Another opponent to marijuana legalization in Arizona is the Yavapai County Attorney, Sheila Polk. She's the chair of MAT Force. I say it like that because it's in all caps. MAT Force, which is, I don't know what it stands for. It stands for We Bust People with Weed. And she's the vice chair of Arizonans for Responsible Drug Policy. And she says, teens in Colorado now use marijuana at the highest rate in the nation, 74% higher than the national average, despite the fact Reuters said no, they do not use it at higher than the national average. But they're going to hammer away at that. They found that 74% stat somewhere, probably from the Rocky Mountain high-intensity drug trafficking folks, and they're just going to stick with it. You can't convince them otherwise, even when National Survey on Drug Use and Health, Monitoring the Future, and the Colorado Public Health, and the CDC, that was the other one, that have come out and all said, yeah, there hasn't really been an increase in teenage use in the legalized states. They're gonna try, though. They're just going to keep saying it until you believe it. But she also brings out one of the old standard, it's just like a warm blanket every time this one comes out. Sheila Polk says, quote, "Today, their industry pumps out marijuana edibles with potency levels as high as 60%. Compare that to the marijuana of the 1970s with potency levels of less than 1%. There's so much wrong with that. First of all, it's kind of like saying, compare this shot of Bacardi 151 to this O'Doul's Near Beer. The O'Doul's Near Beer only has 0.5% alcohol, and the shot has 150 or 70. What would be 150 proof is 75 point. I got to do the math in my head. 75.5% alcohol. You're comparing apples and oranges. Comparing an edible to a joint from the 70s is apples and oranges. And it ignores the fact that first, they had edibles in the 70s too. And they were made exactly the same way. And they could be made into very potent edibles back then too. It also ignores the fact that the marijuana potency, this claim of marijuana potency being less than 1%, means that this woman really thinks people in the 70s were smoking hemp. She really thinks that we were burning draft cards, burning our bras, protesting the Vietnam War on hemp. It just ain't true. This stat that you get from these drug warriors all the time refers often to the Potency Monitoring Project, and their data comes from police agencies who left their seized marijuana in hot, dry lockers for long periods of time, which of course degrades the potency of the THC. Also in their seizures, they were mixing in all sorts of ditchweed, all sorts of feral hemp, and testing just every bit of it, including, sticks and stems and seeds. And they were coming up with less than 1%. There were strains back in the day, folks. There's Acapulco Gold, Maui Wowie, Panama Red, all sorts of great marijuana, really good stuff. Now, I will not deny that marijuana has gotten better overall in general. Absolutely. We got flower now that's producing at 24 to 30% THC. But that does in no way reflect the fact that the people back in the day that were smoking pot didn't also get their hands on some pretty potent stuff. And let's not forget that hash also existed back in the day, and people were smoking that as well. This is the time-honored, well-worn, overused marijuana potency argument. We call it, it's not your father's Woodstock weed, as if the weed back then was it was very dramatically different. Now, I will talk to some of the older folks sometimes, and they will say, oh yeah, you smoke pot today and a puff or two of it get you high. Back in the day, you had to smoke half a joint to a joint of it to get you high. But you still ended up getting high. This is one of the things I think where the comparison, treat marijuana like alcohol does us some harm. Because when you're drinking alcohol, you go from this pleasant buzz to this warm drunk to this uncontrollable blotto, sloshed, shit-faced stage, right? So at the different levels of continuing to use it, you get increasingly impaired, dysfunctional, and disgusting. Marijuana doesn't have that same thing. With marijuana, you smoke it and you maybe get a little relaxed. And then you smoke some more and you may get a little lifted. And you smoke some more and you may get some high. And then you smoke some more and you may get baked. And then you smoke some more and you might get couch locked. But nowhere in there are you puking on people's shoes or starting fights or being a real problem for society. So this idea that, they not your father's Woodstock weed, they smoked this weak weed back in the day. But they would smoke it like a whole joint of it to get to this place called high. Today, we smoke a bowl or half a bowl of it to get to this place called high. The high is no different. Whether you're smoking 4% weed, 8% weed, 16% weed, or 32% weed, or taking a 90% dab, you're trying to get to the same place, which is high. And the high is not a different high. It's the same exact high. Just like you can get puke drunk on 18 cans of beer, or you can get puke drunk on 6 shots of whiskey, or you can get puke drunk on a bottle and a half of wine. You still end up at the same place, puke drunk. So this idea that higher potency marijuana is somehow some sort of different drug is just ludicrous. All right, stay tuned. We got part 2 of this radical rant on the Arizona arguments against marijuana legalization when we return.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
How high do you like your profit margin? CannabisRadio.com.
Play as Ted Growing, expelled botany sophomore and the biggest grower in town, only on Weed Firm Replanted. Available on the App Store and Google Play.
It's a lot of work being the biggest grower in town. Maintaining a room full of plants while dealing with a slew of eccentric customers? From a hardcore partier to the curious neighbor next door.
Is anybody home?
Help me expand my bud business by unlocking new strains, customizing my grow room, and completing challenges that you can't get enough of. Grow your empire so big you can see it from space. Low on funds? Don't worry. Weed Firm Replanted is free to download.
Download Weed Firm Replanted for free on the App Store and Google Play today. Get growing, Mr. Growing.
Previously on the Stoner Jesus Show.
We do have John McAfee. He's running for the Libertarian Party nomination for president. What makes someone like you want to take the reins of this?
We're so far behind, it's frightening. And in a cyber war, we can't hack into the Chinese. Back in 1979, they started building cyber defense systems. We didn't even think about it until 20 years ago. I see no candidates and certainly no one within government capable of dealing with this issue.
The Stoner Jesus Show, live Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Or find the Stoner Jesus Show podcast on demand at CannabisRadio.com and StonerJesus.net.
Peace, bitches.
The Russ Belville Show, where the truth about marijuana gets more than a minute to speak.
When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
We must wage what I call total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale.
And one major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant. All right, welcome back. Time for part 2 of our look at the arguments against marijuana legalization initiatives that are starting to pop up at Secretary of State's offices and should appear on your November 2016 ballots if you're in California, Arizona, Massachusetts, Maine, or Nevada. These arguments in particular come from the Arizona Secretary of State's office. We're just kind of going through some of their bullet points. And we return to Sheila Polk. She's the Yavapai County Attorney and the chair of MAT Force and the vice chair of Arizonans for Responsible Drug Policy. And one of her points as to why you should vote against legalization is that, they're not really locking people up for weed. Everybody in Arizona is cool with weed. There's no problems with weed. She says, quote, "A person cannot be incarcerated for marijuana possession or use until a third conviction, with a few exceptions." End quote. Yeah, this is another classic argument we get, which is the "we don't really lock people up for weed" argument. I love this argument. We don't really lock people up for weed. There's not really people in jail for weed. That's not really happening. There's another guy in here. Let's see if I can find him. He's a little bit farther down the list. The disaster guy. Okay. Traffic death guy. Yes. Where is that? Doggone it. Way down there. But it has to do with, here we go. Paul Cavelli, the executive director of Bridges Network Recovery Center. So it's another one of these rehab guys, right? Sheila Polk is referring to, in part of her argument, she talks about how Arizona is one of the leading treatment, not incarceration states. The translation there is drug courts and forced rehab for marijuana smokers, right? People caught with weed, drug court, forced rehab. And Paul Cavelli says it as plainly as any of them. He says, quote, "Half of all U.S. prison inmates are there for violent crimes. The rest is mostly in for property crime like burglary and drunk or drugged driving. Only 15 to 20% are in for drug crimes, and almost all of those in prison for trafficking. Only about 1% are solely in for possession, and there's always other circumstances. Most of them pleaded down from a more serious charge or were caught with so much they were obviously selling it. And only about 5% of this already tiny number involved marijuana. The rest were possessing hard drugs. No one gets busted and jailed for merely smoking a joint. Okay, so let's tear this apart. First of all, this is, I've heard it referred to in other ways. This guy does a good job of trying to minimize it. Half of this, and then 15% of that, and then 20, 30%, and then only 5%. Makes it seem really small. Kevin Sabet used to say, only 0.1% of inmates are in jail for marijuana, blah, blah, blah. There's numerous ways of saying it, but it always forgets one part of this equation. There are 2.3 million people in the U.S. incarceration system when you talk about federal and state prisons and jails. So any small number of that is still a pretty big damn number. If we go with Kevin Sabet's 0.1, right? 0.1%. Okay, so that's 1 out of 1,000. So out of 2.3 million, that's 2.3 thousand, 2,300 people. 2,300 people whose lives are wasting away for the mere possession of marijuana. And if we figured the numbers for this guy in Arizona, we would still have 100, 200 people sitting in jail for possession. And this part of the argument where he says, they've pleaded down from more serious crimes. They pleaded down and just got possession when they could have got so much more. Well, here's the problem with that argument. So many more of these things that they're pleading down from are merely the circumstances of possessing the marijuana in the first place. Charges like conspiracy charges. Well, the conspiracy just had to do with getting the marijuana. They say, we're going to charge you with this conspiracy, but you can plead down to marijuana possession. Well, the conspiracy was just thinking about getting the marijuana in the first place and planning how you're going to get the marijuana. There'll be charges of being too close to, being in a school zone. There'll be additional charges you get because you were in possession of a firearm, exercising your Second Amendment rights. There'll be extra charges you can get because your kids were there. Now you got child endangerment, and now you're pleading down to just the possession charge. So that's another bit of smoke and mirrors they do. Here's another bit of the smoke and mirrors with that. This stats that they're referring to don't refer to the people who were on probation or parole who then get dinged in a drug test and end up going back for their original crime. Like maybe you committed an assault, got in a fight, committed an assault, went to jail for the assault. You end up on probation. During your probation, you fail a P test. When you go back for failing your probation, you're not back for possession of marijuana. You're back for assault. And so you don't show up for being in jail for the fact that marijuana is illegal. So that's another way they hide who's in there for marijuana. And then another part of this is it ignores the people that when they do get busted for the weed, it's not like the cop just sends them on their merry way with a ticket. They get arrested. It's not decrim in Arizona. It's arrest. It's hands behind your back, put cuffs on you, put you in the squad car, take you to the jail, and process you. At that point, you need to come up with bail. Now, if you're a poor person, you can't come up with the bail, and so you sit in jail until your arraignment, which can be a month away, 2 months away, how long, who knows. During that time, you're in jail. You can't go to work. You can't take care of your family. You lose your job. Most jobs don't like to keep you around when you're in jail, and you don't know when you're going to get back. Those are the kind of figures that go unrecognized in this, nobody's in jail for weed. Well, yeah, very few people are sitting in prison doing hard time from a conviction for solely marijuana possession. That is an absolute half-truth. Because it ignores the other half of the truth that people still get arrested for this, and it's the arrest itself that messes with people's lives. Let's go back to some of the other arguments here. And there's so many of them. I've got this huge bullet point list. Let's see. Lisa Keegan and Jamie Jaime Molera, the former Arizona superintendents of public instruction, say legalizing an intoxicating substance for adults will mean more youth consumption, just as it has in Colorado and Washington, except as, like we told you, it hasn't gone up in Colorado and Washington. But here's one that I really want to dig into. The former superintendents of public instruction say, every study on marijuana use in education shows students using marijuana are more likely to have lower education scores and outcomes and are far more likely to drop out. This is one of those obfuscations. This is one of those things where, yeah, you can take a survey of people that smoke pot and find out, guess what? They have lower incomes. They didn't go as far in school. They're less satisfied with their lives. Isn't it interesting what making someone a criminal can do to their life? Because how many of these people would have gone farther in school if they didn't lose a scholarship or financial aid from a weed bust? How many more of them would have done better in life if they could have applied for the jobs that didn't have marijuana drug testing or lose a good job that they had because of marijuana drug testing? How many people grew up in households where the household was broken up over an alleged marijuana crime? They end up with a single parent household, end up with a lower socioeconomic bracket because marijuana was illegal. Who else do we got in here? We got to love our friend Ed Gogek, MD. He's been a guest on the show. He wrote the book Debunking Marijuana, and he's a board-certified psychiatrist from Prescott, Arizona. And this is the Ed, of course. He's on that Project Sam mailing list, obviously, because he wants to talk about, just like big tobacco, a legal marijuana industry would target teenagers. With both tobacco and marijuana, 90% of adult users start as teens. Okay, so this is the old big marijuana argument. This is the argument, oh my God, legal marijuana is going to go after your kids. Unlike illegal marijuana, which never sold to your kids. Unlike illegal marijuana, which had its dealers in the hallways of your schools, out in the parking lot behind the shop class. Unlike the illegal marijuana whose dealers never checked ID. See, they talk about how this big marijuana industry is going to be preying on teenagers. And I think, you mean, how much worse could they prey on teenagers than the illegal market? The illegal market preys on teenagers by having them become the dealers and the couriers because they know they're juveniles and they don't get as seriously busted as an adult would for that same activity. The illegal marijuana market is the one that employs the youth. The legal marijuana market requires you to be 21 and get an MED card in Colorado. And this idea that the legal marijuana industry is going to target teenagers who can't get into the stores to buy their products. They can't even get through the front door to go in and buy the products. They're targeting them somehow. And it flies in the face of the fact, the demographic fact that shows since 2002, there has been no increase in the number of monthly teenage users. In fact, a slight decrease. Even after the increase in population, a slight decrease in teenage marijuana smokers. But there's been a tripling in the number of senior marijuana smokers. 3 times as many senior marijuana smokers. And that's not just the baby boom bubble making its way past the age of 50. It's also by rate. The rate has gone up among seniors. That's who big marijuana is marketing to. Do you think Whoopi Goldberg's menstrual cream products are being marketed to teenage kids? That's all the time we got for hour one, but we're going to be doing more of this debunking. I got enough stuff in this Arizona list to go for the entire rest of the week. You might be hearing some more rants on this stuff. Stay tuned for hour 2. Got all sorts of interesting stories coming your way. Fatal K2 overdose, near fatal K2 overdose in Washington State, where real weed is legal. What's up with that? That and financial news from Arkansas and Arizona and plenty more. For everyone here at CannabisRadio.com, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.